thing is you have to win.
Ill intent, violence, physicality, pain. Enough is enough.
All right, guys. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the first live reaction Just Win podcast of the season, or ever, actually. That's Sean Reed. That's Vic Tafer. I'm Ted Wynn. And unfortunately, the podcast curse of us all picking the Raiders to win has followed us into this new stream. We all picked them to win, and they lost this game in a game that was very winnable, that I thought they dominated parts of, but they just couldn't do it. And, part of it was that fourth and one that they did not go for. Let's talk about that decision a little bit. What do you guys think?
I set the framing up a little bit better than that. Yeah, get the people some context. But the Raiders were trailing 16-10 in the fourth quarter against the Chargers. They had the ball in Chargers territory. About 7 minutes left. They had 3 timeouts left. Faced a 4th and 1, and they decided to punt the ball. The offense had been struggling to that point, but that's a really conservative decision. It's the first time since 2016 that a team has been in that situation and elected to punt the ball. And obviously they went on to lose. And so hindsight is 2020. But I think even in the moment, everybody knew what was coming next. I mean, obviously the crowd here in SoFi, given how many Raiders fans there are in Los Angeles, they started booing as A.J. Cole started to come on the field. It wasn't anything against J.J. Cole, but they wanted them to go for it, and they didn't. So I thought it was a pretty obvious situation. You should go for it. Obviously, they didn't, but what do you guys think?
You want some context? I'll give you context. This is from Bill Barnwell from ESPN. In the last 5 years, 63 out of 64 teams have gone for 4th and 1 at the opponent's 40 to 49-yard line when trailing by a touchdown or less.
The one team
That's bad.
This
is one Raiders. Of the worst decisions you'll see this season.
It's bad. Obviously, you're not playing to win when you do that. You're kind of maybe a little defensive coaching, but I cannot totally not see where he was coming from. They had gotten stuffed twice on 3rd and 1, and also on 4th and 1, and it wasn't close. Like those 3 times, they were not close to getting the first down with 1 yard to go. So I think based on that, our defense is pretty good. I can see where he was thinking. I don't agree with it, but I can see where he's coming from as far as the offense only had 10 points on the day. So it's hard to say, if we go for it, we're going to get it. I mean, it was a pretty bad offensive showing. The O-line didn't play well at all today, both run blocking and pass blocking. Minshew had 2 turnovers. Zamir White didn't look great. Yes, bad decision, but I can see what his thinking was when he made it.
But the problem is you have to trust the offense eventually. You don't trust them in the 4th and 1. You have to trust them if you get the ball back to score a touchdown. So, I'm not
agreeing with you. I agree with you. It was a bad decision, but I'm just saying that they had tried it 3 times before and gotten stuffed. It wasn't close. It wasn't they got stuffed badly. Those lines did not play well, so I can see what he was thinking. But again, It's not playing to win, which is goes against what they preach, like the ill intent, all that stuff. There's no ill intent to not play. It was kind of backing down a little bit. So I get it. It definitely is a reason why it hasn't been done before. It doesn't make sense in terms of stats and analytics, and just in terms of wanting a team to know you have confidence in them. Hey, we can do this. But at that point, he didn't have confidence in the offense, and I can see why he didn't. So, but no excuse. It's a bad decision.
Yeah, they had five situations at that point where they had been in third and 3 or shorter, and they only got it twice. And they went for it on 4th and 1 in the first quarter. They were actually in their own territory, so it was a more risky time when they did it then, and resulted in a turnover on down. So, like Vic said, it hadn't gone well for them at that point, and the offensive line was really struggling in this game. I mean, they really couldn't run the ball efficiently, and they also couldn't pass protect for very long. I think that's part of the reason why Gardner Minshew only I think his average air yards per attempt was 4.5 yards, which is very, very, very short. And I just don't think they trusted the offensive line to whether that was to hold up in the pass game or in the run game. But as Ted said, in that situation, while it was 7 minutes left and they had 3 timeouts, so it's reasonable to think you can get the ball back. you got to go for it at some point, right? And I mean, it's the first game of the season. This offense, while they struggled last year, it's a lot of new pieces, a new quarterback. You got to give them a chance to go out there and prove themselves, and they didn't do it. And you could say it cost them the game.
Yeah, and this was a problem last year too. Like there were situations where Antonio Pierce should have gone for it and he didn't. So, I think I just don't understand the process. Like what is their thinking and philosophy when it comes to fourth down? Because it seems so random. Like they went for it on their own 30-yard line at the beginning of the game, but you don't go for it later in the game. Like there has to be some sort of overlying process. Like you don't have to be like Dan Campbell and go for every fourth down, but like I just want to see a little bit more consistency and like they just have to be more aggressive. I mean, in that situation, I think you got to go for it and just live with the decision.
Well, I think the process last year and this year is that he has a lot more confidence in his defense than he does in his offense. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I think so. You would hope as the offense becomes clicks a little better and gets a little better accustomed to each other and has a little more in sync. They weren't in sync at all today. Maybe in the future he becomes more aggressive, but today, with what he saw today, he went back to last year's kind of conservative philosophy and decided to go with this defense and not be aggressive.
Yeah, and I mean they have I know Ted asked a couple times last year, like they have a guy that's head of game management. His name's Matt Sheldon. He's been with the franchise for a while, and AP is able to get to him on a headset in those situations and consult him. And I mean, you could see on the CBS broadcast, up until even when AJ Cole was on the field, you could see AP talking through it, and it seemed like he sort of mouthed, should I go for it? And so it's not like he's just like independently making these decisions and it's only up to him. He has the final say, of course, but there is a process to it. They just tend to lean on the side of being more conservative. I mean, I think they were around league average last year in terms of the amount of times that they went for it on fourth down. Obviously part of that was with Josh McDaniels being the head coach. So I don't think they're like among like the most conservative teams in the league, but you would like to see them be more aggressive. And especially with this type of team, like the Raiders aren't going to be, like some sort of juggernaut like the Chiefs or something of that nature where they're just, running away with games. Like they're going to have to be aggressive and take chances in order to be a competitive team this season. And so at some point they're going to have to buy into that philosophy and that mentality. That doesn't mean you go for it on fourth down every single time, obviously, but in situations like that, you would like to see them push the envelope open a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the strength of their team is supposed to be, throwing the ball to Devontae Adams and also these two tight ends. Heard about, Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer all of training camp, and that's supposed to be the foundation of this team. The 12 personnel. Guys are hard to cover in terms of linebacker or safety. They can block. You can have different looks. And I think we didn't see that for a lot today. I think Luke Getsy in his first game was pretty conservative. There was a stretch there late where they had 5 straight passes to the tight ends. That was actually the only time they got to the red zone the entire game. So I think in the future, he has to look at that. I mean, that was the key to open things up. But there were no shots downfield. The Chargers played too high. They couldn't get past that. I just think they were balling up and they couldn't really get out of their own. And ideally, they could run the ball to kind of create some pressure. They couldn't run the ball, so the offense was kind of stuck all day. I think that ideally, if you're a Raiders fan, you hope that it gets better as they get more, more reps together and more in sync with Luke Getsy and what he wants to do. But today, it wasn't good.
Yeah, and that's definitely going to be a problem. And me and Tashan wrote about this when we wrote about the Raiders' 12 personnel usage, and we talked about it in the podcast. But if the Raiders can't run the ball and they can't get teams to respect their run game, you don't get the advantages you want with 12 personnel. You don't get to match up Bowers with the linebacker, and it just becomes difficult. And it wasn't just a run blocking. It was the pass blocking. I know Gardner Minshew did not play well in this game, but at the same time, he did not have a lot of time. Like that pass rush was on him pretty quick. So, I think Thayer Munford actually held up pretty well. A lot of the pressure I felt came from the left side, and it wasn't all Colton Miller. There were times where there were some stunts that got through, and maybe it's just a rust issue. But the number one thing is the offensive line has to play much better than it did against the Chargers, and the Chargers do have an elite duo of pass rushers when they're healthy, but they have to be much better than they were today.
Yeah, Khalil Mack had a 1.5 sacks, and both came on a bull rush of Colton Miller. I talked to him after the game. He said that was kind of his game plan because Colton had off-season shoulder surgery, so he wanted to kind of be on him all game and really press him and kind of bull rush him and be physical and test that shoulder. So obviously his game plan worked, and he made some big plays. Also had a tip for an interception. So a big day for Khalil Mack, and I think he definitely what he wanted to do against Colton worked out well for him.
Yeah, and this offensive line obviously it isn't at full strength yet. With Jackson Powers Johnson, he was inactive with this game due to illness before the game. So Cody Whitehair is in there left guard. So you basically have a backup left guard, and then Colton Miller in his first game coming back from off-season shoulder surgery. So it's not that surprising, especially against an elite player like Khalil Mack, and even Joey Bosa had a sack in this game, that they had some issues in pass protection, and so maybe that can get better as the season goes on, but. I think, Luke Getsy's going to have to get a little bit more creative with their play calling. I think they were pretty stagnant and vanilla in this game, and it really reminded me of their offense last year. I mean, that was sort of the issue was they only threw to the short to intermediate parts of the field and ran the ball, and it just became really predictable to where defense could just sit on what they were doing. They didn't have to worry about them taking deep shots down the field, and they were in hell. And that's basically what we saw in this game. I mean, they only had 10 points. They really couldn't find much success out of that one play where Alexander Madison took that short pass and hurdled a couple guys and ran into the end zone, but it was pretty ugly for him besides that. And I really didn't think Gardner Minshew played poorly in this game. I thought he was all right. Between them not being able to run the ball and the pass protection being what it was, I don't really know how much more I expected out of a player out of his caliber, So I think this game, the offensive struggles is really on the offensive line, and then, some of the decisions that they had between Luke Getsy and Antonio Pierce.
Gardner said on the one turnover, the play where he fumbled the ball and it got returned back and it gave him 3 points. He was going to throw it, try to pull it back, and then the ball kind of came loose. It was behind the line of scrimmage, so it was a fumble. So clearly an ugly play, and that led to 3 points. And they gave the Chargers 6 points pretty much. The offense did with that play, and also the 4th and 1 stop. So the defense I thought did okay for the most part. They played pretty well in the first half. Kind of gave up some big runs late that kind of killed them, but I thought defense for the most part. You can see why that's going to be the strength of this team and kind of the foundation for any hope they have going forward.
Yeah, so the rush defense was pretty good throughout, and there's some crazy numbers that came from this game because rushing success-wise is, when you look at rushing success rate is how many successful runs they had or what kind of percentage of successful runs they had. The Chargers only had 29.6% of their runs be successful. That's a very low number, but 129 of their 176 yards came on 4 runs. So that means they had 23 carries for 47 runs. So, I mean, the run defense was pretty good, but the explosives killed them.
That's
and
the
part
old.
of it,
sorry.
They got tired. I think part of it was they got a little tired, and the Chargers, you knew they would. A Jim Harbaugh team, they were just going to keep pounding their head against the wall until something happened, and it happened.
This is before you guys' time, but my guy Tommy Kelly, who's D tackle, would always say, "We went stop, then boom." So that was that. Today was stop, boom, late for the Raiders defense, which you can't have. And again, I think we talked about it when I kind of said it was a must-win game, and I think I was kind of serious. I think it was a must-win game because in watching the game today, I think the Raiders are a more talented team. I really do. I mean, I don't think the Chargers have any playmakers at all on offense. The offensive line's okay, pretty good, but Herbert's obviously a quarterback, but he's got no one to throw the ball to. There's nothing really to worry about. I mean, other teams all year long are going to stack line of scrimmage and make them try and do something. So I just think that looking back, this is a bad loss. It's going to be hard to bounce back next week because the Ravens are obviously a really good team. That's on the road. So the hope is that you get back, I'm guessing you're going to be 0-2, but you have home games against the Panthers and the Browns. So you can't get back to 2-2 and maybe a fresh start at that point. But definitely a rough start after all the optimism in the preseason.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say this is a game they should have won. I mean, the defense was playing really well in the first half, and them being behind and ended up losing this one. It was really on the offense, and we said that I don't know how many times last year, especially towards the beginning of the year, and so it's not necessarily something new, but that doesn't make it feel any better for Raiders fans, I'm sure. I am a little bit concerned about the run defense just because I know a lot of it was on those big plays, but they have some tendencies that allows that shit to happen pretty often. I mean, poor angles, guys coming down from the secondary, poor tackling from guys up front, really at all 3 levels, poor tackling. Even on that McConkey touchdown, I know it was a pass, but not being able to wrap him up before he got into the end zone, and so that's something they got to shore up. I mean, they were bad against the run last year. They weren't good in the preseason. They really struggled in this game. So especially talk about a team like the Ravens next week with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, on the road. Like, if you can't stop the run, there's going to be an ugly one. And so they're going to have to get better, at least in that area. Like, it can't be what it was in this one. Like, even if the secondary is playing well and the pass rush is active, which I think, both of those elements of the defense were a factor in this game. But the run defense was a weakness, and if that continues to be the case, teams are going to continue to run it down the throat.
Yeah, I think part of the issue, and I'm not going to say that this was a huge reason, was, they got tired and depth kind of affected them. They, right before the game, Malcolm Kuntz is out. He's on IR. And then Tyree Wilson leaves the game and he can't come back in, and that affects the rotation as well. So you have a lot of guys playing a lot of snaps. Is there any injury updates on those guys?
Malcolm Kuntz, is still to be determined how long he's out for. They placed him on injury reserve, so he's going to miss at least 4 games. It sounds like it's really going to depend on how his rehab process goes for that knee injury in terms of whether he's able to come back this season. As for Tyree Wilson, he got hurt in the first quarter, came back, then ended up having to come out again. And Antonio Pierce didn't have an immediate update for us after the game, so to be determined on him as well. Antonio Pierce talks on Monday, so we may get some more insight into the status of Kuntz and Wilson then. But as you said, they only had 3 defensive ends who could come into the game at that point, and so they were pretty thin there. But fatigue and that injuries in combination with the offense, basically going 3 and out every time, it's easy to see how the defense got tired at the end there.
Yeah, Tyree was wearing a knee brace after the game. I think you're right. It could have been a case where the team got a little tired and kind of worn down. It was hot. It was 97 degrees at kickoff, and my fat ass was sweating walking down to the locker room afterwards. So it was definitely hot. So I can see where if you're actually doing something and playing a game where you might get a little tired in the fourth quarter. But no excuses. I think other teams, the Chargers didn't do that. So I think, but still, the depth definitely is a concern going forward.
That's why another reason you got to go for a fourth. You can't, get back on the defense, a tired defense at the end of the game. Yeah. That's a factor.
Yeah, they were obviously wearing down at that point. Like, they had given up a bunch of rushing yards, so it wasn't like the most shocking thing in the world that they, went on to lose after that.
And also on Dobbins' 2 big runs, the first one there were some missed tackles. I think Wilkins and Merrick both got kind of treated pretty poorly in those plays. But the last one, the 61-yarder, I thought Tashan and I both looked at it. It was really well blocked. It was kind of a case where, okay, that's what the O-line is supposed to do, and it kind of wasn't any mistakes that jumped out or wrong gaps. It was like every guy hit his marker. Dobbins made the move, and he was gone. So that one, sometimes you got to tip your cap to the other team, and that's what happened there. I think that was a play where executed well by a team that's obviously well coached.
I went back and looked at the play. They just ran an old school ISO play. The Raiders knew they were going to run. They had 8 in the box. They had Max Crosby playing linebacker on that play, actually. And then he blitzed. They got penetration. They got exactly what they want. It looked like every gap was covered. And then sorry.
You didn't cover that gap. That gap was not covered. The dog came right through it, man.
Yep, opened the door and ran through. But so J.K. Dobbins, it looked like J.K. Dobbins was stopped. And the ISO does not usually cut back, but he cut back across the grain, and John Jenkins looked like he was in the hole. And John Jenkins was good throughout the game, but Jenkins just couldn't get off the block on Rashawn Slater, and that caused a big cutback lane. And that's why it was a 61-yarder. It was just a really incredible play by J.K. Dobbins. But I think if Jenkins just had a little more energy on that play, he would have got off the block, because he had his hat in the hole. He just couldn't get off the block.
Yeah, that's part of run defense, is shedding blocks. That's just part of it. So we'll see if they're able to improve that moving forward.
Yeah,
so last thing, we got to jump into the fight at the end, right?
Yeah, last thing we'll talk about is the fight at the end with Jack Jones and Joshua Palmer. What do you guys think about a possible suspension? Do you think it's going to happen?
I think it's possible. Both those guys got tossed, and they more so because I think they started the fight. They started the whole thing, but if you watch it, a lot of guys got involved, a lot of punches were thrown. So I'm not sure how much the league wants to come down with the hammer, but they definitely could if they wanted to. So I think we talked about the depth issues already on defense. That could be even more of a problem if that happens. But I mean, Pierce mentioned it. Undisciplined kind of can happen. You got your ass kicked. They scored. Let it go. Don't try and become all posture up and start talking shit. And I just think that frustrations came out. Obviously, you can't have that in this level. And Jack Jones has been a kind of a problem with him in the past. His emotions kind of get the best of him. And again, today he's a guy got thrown out. So we'll see what happens with suspensions. But it's a bad look, and there's definitely possible repercussions from it if the league really wants to make a statement.
Yeah, I think the length that it went on and how many people got involved and the punches that were thrown, I wouldn't be shocked if somebody came out of this getting suspended. And sometimes we even see if the league doesn't come down, sometimes teams institute their own sort of discipline in these kind of situations. So it wouldn't surprise me. I think it's justified. I mean, you can't lose your cool in that situation. Undisciplined. The game was decided at that point, so that's not why they lost or anything like that. But you don't want to set that kind of precedent for things moving forward.
Yeah, I thought Crosby was part of the fight. Did he throw a punch?
Yeah. Him, Christian Wilkins,
exactly an issue.
Some other guys. So there were multiple Raiders that threw punches for sure.
Yeah, on both sides. And Pierce himself said that it won't be tolerated. So I'm not sure, like Tashan said, maybe he takes some action, maybe Mark Davis does. But clearly people will look at it, the team and the league overnight tomorrow morning, and we'll see what happens. But there's already such a small margin of error against the Ravens that any more hits to the depth of this team would definitely be crushing as far as next week goes. But we'll see.
Yeah. All right, before we get into questions, I'll just highlight a little bit of a silver lining. I mean, I thought when the Raiders when Gardner had some time, you could see that the Raiders have a lot of weapons, and they could get this passing game going. Devontae got open. We saw Bowers flash. Jacoby Myers, and when you get Zamir White into the open field, he's a load to bring down. So this offensive line has to gel together. I think Miller will get better as he gets healthier. We'll see what JPJ could bring as a guard, but we kind of talked about it. This kind of scheme takes some time to learn. You have to really get really good with your communication. So we'll see what happens.
And just breaking it down by halves, I mean, they ran the ball 11 times for 22 yards in the first half, 11 for 47 in the second half. So there's some progress there. And again, if you're this team looking to build off of stuff, that's something you kind of look at and say, okay, well, this is what we did better second half. And I think the talent's there that the scheme should work in terms of the offensive line and the zone scheme. I think Zamir White, those first three carries we got stuffed, they really weren't his fault. I mean, he had nowhere to go. I mean, I don't know what he could have gotten in those jet packs and kind of flown over the pile, but I'm not sure what else he could have done. So, so you definitely can build off that running game as far as it getting better as the game went on.
Oh, and on that first fourth down, Colton Miller didn't get off the ball. He was late off the ball when everybody else got off the ball. I don't know what's up with that, but again, I think those kind of issues get ironed out as the season goes along. All right, let's get into questions. First questions from Jonathan Messenger. If you fire Getsy, who is the OC for the rest of the season? Then when you want to hire you.
I love that question, man. We're not wasting any time. You lost to the Chargers, go score 10 points, you got to go. That's it. Take your little playbook and get the hell out of here. Who would take his place? I would think they probably go with a young Ted Wynn to break some. Again, it's ridiculous. It's an absurd question. But clearly a rough start for Luke today. But again, it's early. A lot of these teams look sloppy early on, so you have to hope that that things will get better.
Yeah, calm down a little bit, man. It's not that bad yet. It's only one game.
Wait, you guys didn't see the second part of the question or hear the second part of the question.
Oh, my bad. I apologize.
Then when you want to hire a new OC in 2025, who wants to take the job after you fired the guy after the game?
Wow. He's thinking this through. I like it. He's got the whole thing. That's why you can't do it. Even if you wanted to fire Luke Getsy today, you can't do that because it sets a bad precedent. But it's a funny question, but it's not based on reality.
Yeah, let's give him some time. That O-line has to gel.
Yeah, exactly. Got Joe.
Yeah, you're not going to see Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa every game. I mean, they don't even play every game, so we'll see. Second question: if Jack Jones is suspended for the next game, how worried should we be about the outside corners on this roster?
Pretty worried. I think if Jack Jones is suspended, which we'll see. I think they're playing. We saw it a little bit early in this game. Shouts to Ted. You got to give him props for his prediction earlier this week that they would use more 3-4 fronts. They started the game in 3-4. When they did, they moved Nate Hobbs outside. I think that's what would happen if Jack Jones is out. I think they would move Nate Hobbs outside and then start Darnay Holmes at nickel. In terms of their depth behind that, very questionable. DeCamerion Richardson, he was out for this game due to a hamstring injury. Those are always tricky. We don't know how long he's going to be out, if he'll be available next week. So maybe they'd have to call up somebody from the practice squad. They called up Sam Webb today. I don't think he got any snaps, though. So it's already a thin room. And this kind of speaks to obviously this is different. It's not an injury, but it's, doing something stupid. But nonetheless, they do not have a deep cornerback room.
But you got to find a wheelchair, find face on, wheel him back in here, and then throw him on the field and see what happens. That's what I would do, because depth is not good.
All right, next question by Aaron Sanchez. Over under on 5 more games for Adams as a Raider. I think he's trying to say
5 more games.
Over under is 5 more games before Adams gets traded, or not.
It's definitely over. I think they're going to get, like I said, they could be 2-2. I think that's not too unfeasible at this point. It's a fresh start. Like Devontae after the game handled it pretty well. He definitely said, Gardner showed some good things we can build on. It's week 1. It's not going to be pretty. So I definitely, he's saying the right things today. I think you have to have a little patience, and it's a process. I know Raider fans don't want to hear that, but it is a process. Ideally, it started off today with an ugly win as opposed to an ugly loss, which definitely was possible, but it didn't. So you gotta just aim for 2-2 and then maybe take off from there. But you gotta start the slow build.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over as well. I think that's a little bit ambitious to get him out of here in under 5 games. So gonna go over.
Taking the under? Because we all can't agree. That's been documented. If we all agree, that we're going to be wrong. So let's take the under. That's good.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna say under. I mean,
Good.
We thought this was a must-win game because they're going to see the Ravens next week, and if they're 0-2, it's a very, very hard thing to do to make the playoffs at 0-2. And if things start spiraling, we kind of have to trade Adams because of the contract. So. I'm gonna say under. So sorry. Well, maybe I'm doing it as a favor for you guys, because if we all predict something, it's usually wrong. So do it for Raider Nation.
There you go.
All right. Next question from Mark Carbone, who donated for Vic. Anyone ask? Yeah, that tip's for you, Vic.
Wow, nice.
Sneak that in your underwear.
That's what? My what?
Whoa! What? Hey, yo!
Wow!
What?
If Vic, anyone asks, no challenge Tucker's.
That costs a lot more than $2. I'll say that. I don't know. No one asked that question. I think we were all focused on other things, but it's good.
But it was a screenplay in the first quarter that went for 10 yards when they needed 11. Which led to the first 4th down attempt, right?
Yeah. People say that it was a bad spot. I couldn't really see it live from my angle. I guess it was, but if they didn't, I could see it. It's early in the game. Maybe you don't want to waste your challenge. But if you're going to go for it on 4th down, I guess you might as well challenge it first just to see if it is a first down. So, game management is something for any head coach. I mean, we see some veteran head coaches continue to struggle in that area, but especially for a first-year guy, that's going to be something that they have to go through. And there's a couple of things in this game, whether it's that or obviously the 4th and 1 decision later in the game that she could point to. And so the Raiders are hoping that that's something that Antonio grows into.
All right. Next question, Louis Garcia. How much of an issue is Colton's shoulder? I'm thinking he's just shaking off some rust.
Yeah, I think he feels fine. I think it's. I mean, he definitely, I thought, felt good the last couple of weeks of training camp and preseason and in practice. I just think today, obviously, going against a guy who's one of the best guys in the league, who's targeting his shoulder. So it's a rough day at the office for Colton. I don't think he'll get stronger. I think he's pretty good. He's obviously a good player, one of the Raiders' better players in offense. So I don't think today's a big warning sign for Colton. It's just a rough day against a guy who's, like I said, one of the top guys in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he missed all OTAs. He missed most of training camp. Didn't play in the preseason. He's only had a couple of weeks of practice under his belt. Like, it's not shocking at all that he has some rust to start the season, especially going against this caliber edge rusher. It's not like he was going against some scrubs out there and getting beat. So I don't think it's something to worry about long term.
And Khalil Mack knows him too, and Khalil Mack, he has one of the best long arms in the league, if not the best long arms in the league. So that's an issue, and we kind of answer this next question by Mario. Thoughts on moving Mumford to left tackle so Miller can recover properly and have Glaze start at right tackle? I mean, I think you just have to play Miller and let him work his way through it. He's a vet, and he's been so good for so long. You just let him work through it, and all that movement, I think, is not good for the line overall.
Yeah, on the list of concerns, Colton Miller's pretty far down low on the list. I think there's a lot more issues that are more pressing than Colton.
All right, next question by R333. If they choose AOC when they made their QB1 decision, do they win this game?
I don't think so, no.
I'm trying to think why would that matter today? Because of the probably be more sacks, I might say. Maybe I don't know if Gardner was super elusive, but I think Aiden probably gets sacked a few more times. I don't know if he's making any throws at Gardner. Did Gardner miss some throws?
Maybe he doesn't drop the ball, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, that's 3 points. That's 3 points. So I'll give you that one. But I don't know. I don't think, like you said, I don't think Gardner was bad today. I think Gardner just he wasn't comfortable for a lot of reasons. I think the O-line was part of that, and obviously Bosa and Mack were part of that. But I don't know if McConnell. If I watched today's game, saying, "Oh, they made the wrong choice at quarterback," I think they're okay with that decision so far.
The one play that I think Aiden would have made that Gardner didn't make was 2 minutes 11 seconds before the fourth quarter, 3rd and 7. The Chargers showed a cover 0 blitz, and they showed the blitz, so it wasn't a disguise or anything. And against cover 0, you got to get rid of the ball. And Gardner looked right at Trey Tucker running a speed out, and he didn't throw it. If he hit Tucker, on time, that would have been a first down. And that was a play that right after that, Daniel Carlson ended up missing the field goal. So that's the only play I could think of that Aiden might have made. But like we said, I don't think Minshew was that bad with the O-line issues that the offense was facing.
That's fair. And I mean, obviously, we've always said O'Connell is more accurate than Gardner is. I think there was a play today where I think it was Tucker made a nice catch. It was a bad throw. There was that play where we didn't know if it was going to Tucker or to Myers, that weird play, and Myers caught it. So Gardner's accuracy is not his strength. And ideally, going forward, you see the reason why they made the choice was because of his scrambling ability and plays off schedule. But today, that didn't really come to fruition. But again, like I said, it's just one game.
All right. Mark is back with another question. He asked, it was a huge blunder to not challenge. Could have been inches instead of a yard. I mean, looking back at it, I thought he probably did get the first, but Mark is asking, please ask Antonio about it tomorrow. Accountability.
Hey, he's paying for it. I appreciate you, Mark. But sadly, I think both of our flights leave after Antonio speaks tomorrow in Las Vegas, and it's not virtual like they were doing in the preseason. So if you're not there in person, you can't ask for questions. So go at Paul Gutierrez and Vinny Bonsignore and everybody else on the beat to ask your question so that we're not putting your money to waste.
Yeah, I think the easy explanation is it was close. Spot fouls are always hard to overturn, and they probably just didn't think it was conclusive evidence. But I think maybe a little bit more aggressive coach might have challenged it.
I'm looking at some of these questions. People are having a hard time today, man. I know it's tough, but it's just one game. It's a season opener. You can't get too down after one game.
Yeah,
But people are definitely getting down.
It's a therapy session. It's a therapy
Yes.
session.
All right, good.
All right. I'm gonna combine these two questions by Louis and Raider Chaos. Raider Chaos asks, "Will the run game get better as the season goes along?" And Louis asks, "What's the status on JPJ?" Because I think if JPJ could play, the draw with him is that he's a physical guard and maybe he could be a little bit better of a run blocker.
I know he was sick, but good.
No, you got it. You got it.
I know he was sick, but I don't think he was going to play regardless. I think the plan was to always kind of give Whitehair this game because you're trying to bring him along and make sure he has everything in his grasp. But I think we talked about it maybe week 3 as a target game for JPJ. But yeah, clearly they drafted him a second round, so they have high hopes for the kid and thinks he can be an impact player, especially the run game and the passing game. So yeah, I think he'll be in there soon enough. And the running game, like we said earlier, has gotten better just today, and hopefully it can keep going an upward trend.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put too much into one game. JPJ getting back whenever that happens I think would be a pretty big boost to the offensive line, and Colt Miller coming back into form. And just overall, I mean, it's I know like people aren't as into like schemes and stuff maybe as Ted is, but like switching blocking schemes is a really big change, and them going from being more of a gap-based blocking scheme to zone based is pretty huge, and that's really dependent on communication. And this is the first game doing that, as a full starting unit, and so it's going to take some time for them to grow into that and hit their groove. And so, I wouldn't rule it out at this point. And I saw somebody else asked in the chat, is Zeus still RB1? Like, I would think he is. I do think it's like the door is open for Madison. I mean, I thought he made a nice play on that catch and run for a touchdown, and if it continues to be that he's more explosive and makes more plays, I don't think it's impossible for him to win the job at some point, but I don't think they're making any lineup changes based off of one game. What are you laughing at?
Reading his comments. I'm reading his comments. Fire everybody.
Oh man, I thought we were the negative ones. What's up with this shit? Y'all lose one goddamn game, and you ready to jump off the cliff, man? What's going on?
Michael Mayer is a liability. He has 2 left feet. Man, people.
That wasn't a hold on Michael Mayer on that big Zamir White run.
Yeah, I agree. That was a bad call. I agree.
Yeah, he just ran him over, but yeah, bad call and kind of a big call. Last question from Nazi. Please be honest. Can the Raiders win more than 6 games this season? They can.
Yeah, I mean, I picked them to win 7, and this was one of the 7. So more than 6 means not 6. So I think they can still. Do I think they will? I'm feeling less good about it right now. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think like I said, I think obviously I thought this was a must-win game. I think it's they look back on and really regret losing this one. But if you can get the 2-2, which I think is definitely possible, I think you definitely can, like, as a recharge things and kind of take a fresh approach. So I do think that, the game against the Panthers at home, that's a game you just can't lose. I know you can, but you really can't lose that one. And the Browns game next week is also one where I think you'd be able to match up okay in terms of stopping their offense. So I think it's still possible. I think they're still got enough talent, especially on offense. That's why today was kind of, I think, frustrating for Raider fans, because you see Adams, the 2 tight ends, Myers. Trey Tucker, nice cat. I think you can see that why they have confidence in this offense in terms of making plays, and Minshew should be okay doing that. So I'll say, yeah, they're still going to win more than 6 games, being honest.
Yeah, I say they will win more than 6 games. I just think losing a game like this is going to bite you in the ass when you get close to playoff teams and you're trying to vie for a playoff spot. It's going to make a difference. So I think they could win more than 6. I think this game really hurts their playoff chances. But I think, like Vic said, there's weapons on this roster. I think the offensive line will get better as the season progresses. And the defense looked as advertised for a lot of this game. Like I mentioned, 4 bad plays, very bad plays, but that's where most of the yardage came from. So I think this defense is going to play at a very high level. But yeah, that's it. I don't think we'll take any more questions from here. We will be back on Thursday. We might have a guest, but if not, we'll preview the Ravens game. But yeah, thanks for joining our first live podcast, and we'll catch you guys on Thursday.
All right,
All
y'all.
right.
Peace.
Hasta la vista.
Later, guys.